how Queen Mary protected Queen Elizabeth's inheritance from her own mother. They were the ultimate symbols of royal power, and Queen Mary essentially held them hostage until her granddaughter, Elizabeth II, was safely seated on the throne. Had these treasures passed to the Queen Mother in 1936, they likely would have been altered beyond recognition, just as she did with Queen Alexandra's wedding necklace, stripping away their historical significance forever. What the world read as bitter hoarding was actually something far more calculated. Queen Mary's so-called stubbornness was, in reality, a masterclass in preservation, all for the sake of a little girl she called Lilibet. While the outside world watched what appeared to be a cold war between Queen Mary and the Queen Mother over the crown's most famous diamonds, Mary's eyes were fixed on something bigger. She knew the young Princess Elizabeth was the true future of the monarchy, not just a future queen, but its very lifeline, her deepest fear that if those jewels passed to her daughter-in-law, they would be quietly dismantled or diverted from the direct royal line, or lost to personal modernization, and history did prove her right. Queen Mother drew the line so firmly on a few jewels that Queen Elizabeth couldn't touch certain pieces, not until 2002. Today, we pull back the curtain on Queen Mary's deliberate plan to protect a royal inheritance, not for herself, but for a little girl named Elizabeth. The Cullinan III and IV. Meet Granny's chips, two of the most valuable privately owned jewels anywhere in the world, estimated to be worth anywhere between £50 million and £180 million. And yes, you heard that right. Private jewels, not locked away in the Tower of London, personal, kept safe for one Lilibet. Queen Mary had these two extraordinary diamonds mounted as a brooch back in 1911 by Carrington and Company. The design is breathtaking. The pear-shaped Cullinan III, weighing in at 94.4 carats, suspended elegantly from the cushion-shaped Cullinan IV at 63.6 carats. Together, they are nothing short of magnificent. But here's where Mary's strategy gets truly clever. The Cullinan 3-9 were private gifts presented by the South African government in 1910, which meant they were never bound by constitutional obligation. When Mary became a widow, no one could legally demand she hand them over. They were hers, and she knew it. So what did she do? She wore them, loudly and deliberately. She showed up to major state events with those diamonds on full display, including the 1937 coronation of her own son. Every public appearance was a quiet but unmistakable declaration. These are not to be passed on. The lending game that other royals played with jewels? Not an option when it came to the Queen Mother. That door was firmly shut. There was also something deeper driving Mary's decisions. A royal traditionalist to her very core, she viewed the former Elizabeth Bowes Lyon as belonging to the lower aristocracy, a Scottish earl's daughter, not a princess by birth. In Mary's world, that distinction mattered enormously. By holding onto the brooch for herself and then leaving it directly to Queen Elizabeth II in 1953, she sent a message that echoed through the halls of the palace loud and clear. The power of the crown belongs to the sovereign, not the consort. She wanted her granddaughter to step onto the world stage fully armoured. By withholding the stones for nearly 20 years, she guaranteed they arrived in Elizabeth's hands untouched, unaltered, and completely intact. The ultimate inheritance from one queen to another. And Queen Elizabeth never forgot it. In a deeply personal tribute to her beloved grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II chose to wear Granny's chips for her Diamond Jubilee in 2012, one of the most watched moments of her entire reign. So who inherits them next? That remains one of the royal family's most intriguing open questions. The Grand Duchess Vladimir Tiara. The Grand Duchess Vladimir Tiara sits at the very heart of this so-called jewel war, because it perfectly captures Queen Mary's strategy: acquire, protect, and ultimately pass on to the right heir. She didn't buy this tiara simply for its beauty. She bought it as a sovereign investment. Her decision to keep it away from Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was deliberate, and her greatest fear about what could happen to it? One word: vandalism. The Queen Mother had a well-known reputation for redesigning jewels to suit modern tastes. To her, it was evolution. To Queen Mary, it was dangerously close to destruction. She feared the Vladimir Tiara's delicate Russian loops could be altered, or worse, lost entirely in redesign. To a woman who had spent her entire life hunting down and buying back lost royal jewels to keep them together, this wasn't customization. It was vandalism of the crown's living history. Then came 1936. When Edward VIII abdicated the throne for Wallis Simpson, it shook the monarchy to its core. For Queen Mary, it wasn't just a scandal, it was a warning. Stability had to be protected at all costs, and in her eyes, that stability had a name, Elizabeth II, and she made a decision. The one person she trusted completely to hold the line. Not a consort, not a daughter-in-law, the future queen herself. So she held on to it, deliberately, patiently, all the way until her death in 1953, ensuring it passed directly to Elizabeth II just weeks before her coronation, at the exact moment it was needed most. And for Queen Elizabeth, the Vladimir Tiara became one of her most beloved and frequently worn pieces, accompanying her through decades of state occasions, royal tours, and defining public moments, right until her final years. Queen Mary had planned it that way all along. The Delhi Durbar parure, emeralds. The Delhi Durbar parure is one of the most breathtaking emerald and diamond suites ever assembled, and one of the clearest examples of Queen Mary's calculated control. This was not just jewellery, this was power, divided with precision. While Queen Mary made a rare concession by lending the tiara to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, in 1946 for a royal tour of South Africa, she drew a firm line at the rest of the set. The emerald necklace, stomacher, earrings and brooch, the most valuable and historically significant pieces, remained under lock and key at Marlborough House. And history proved her point. The tiara stayed with the Queen Mother until her death in 2002, exactly the kind of outcome Queen Mary had predicted and quietly guarded against. At the heart of this entire strategy were the legendary Cambridge emeralds. For Queen Mary, these weren't just gemstones, they were family legacy. When her brother, Prince Francis of Teck, scandalously left these emeralds to his mistress in his will, Mary was horrified. Not just emotionally, but strategically. She stepped in and personally bought them back. For her, this wasn't optional. It was damage control, a mission to keep royal jewels out of private and potentially inappropriate hands and firmly within the monarchy. From that moment, her thinking sharpened. She adopted what can only be described as a divide and conquer strategy. She fulfilled ceremonial expectations by lending visible pieces like the tiara, but withheld the true power pieces. The Delhi Durbar necklace, featuring 9 of the most important Cambridge emeralds, along with the stomacher and other components, never left her control. These were the crown jewels of the parure in everything but name. And she had no intention of letting them be altered, scattered, or absorbed into someone else's personal collection. Instead, she waited. Because of Queen Mary's strategic gatekeeping, Elizabeth II became the first monarch to wear the full, unaltered Delhi Durbar parure since Mary's own era. The scare of losing those emeralds to her brother's mistress gave Queen Mary absolute clarity. Treasures this important could not be risked. Not to outsiders, not to modernization, and not even to her own daughter-in-law. In her mind, there was only one rightful destination, a young girl named Lilibet. The Cambridge Lover's Knot Tiara. Modern audiences know this tiara through 2 faces, Diana's quiet defiance and Catherine's radiant elegance. But the real story of the Lover's Knot begins long before either of them ever wore it. Queen Mary commissioned this tiara in 1913 from Garrard, modelling it after a piece owned by her grandmother, Princess Augusta of Hesse Castle. But this wasn't simply an act of sentimentality. To Mary, this tiara carried what she considered monarch-level gravity, a weight that belonged only on the head of a reigning sovereign, not a consort, and certainly not a dowager. And this is exactly what made her position legally untouchable. Mary paid for this tiara herself, using diamonds and pearls drawn entirely from her own personal collection. That single decision changed everything. Unlike the official heirlooms of the crown, Mary was fully and legally entitled to keep personal items for her lifetime. She knew exactly what she was doing when she paid for it out of her own pocket. She had built herself a legal wall, and for 15 years that wall held firm. Throughout the entire period the Queen Mother sat as Queen Consort and then Dowager Queen, she never once wore the lover's knot. To Mary, the logic was almost painfully simple. Why should the world's most powerful diamonds sit on the head of a dowager, while the reigning queen was left to borrow what was rightfully hers? It made no sense, historically, symbolically, or dynastically. The tiara belonged with the sovereign. Queen Elizabeth wore it frequently throughout the 1950s, and then made one of the most iconic decisions in modern royal history. She loaned it to Princess Diana. A gesture that would have been completely impossible had the Queen Mother ever taken possession of it. History strongly suggests she would have kept it, much like the Oriental circlet, which never found its way back either till 2002, and the pattern didn't stop with Queen Elizabeth. Just as Queen Mary had carefully directed her jewels away from those she deemed unworthy of them, Queen quietly ensured the lover's knot found its way to Catherine, bypassing Camilla entirely. The Girls of Great Britain and Ireland Tiara. The Girls of Great Britain and Ireland Tiara became the final preemptive strike in Queen Mary's strategy, securing the image and authority of the future Elizabeth II while completely bypassing the Queen Mother. And she executed it flawlessly. In 1947, for Elizabeth's wedding, Queen Mary gifted the tiara directly to the young princess. That single move changed everything. By making it a personal wedding gift, she ensured it became Elizabeth's private property, legally placing it out of reach of any claims as a consort or dowager heirloom. No middle person, no ambiguity, a classic Queen Mary move. Princess Elizabeth herself helped shape the narrative. She affectionately called it Granny's Tiara, reinforcing a powerful public image, a direct line between grandmother and granddaughter, one that subtly but unmistakably left her mother out of the equation. But Queen Mary wasn't done yet. She reportedly kept the removable bandeau base for herself at first, allegedly remarking that at 21, the child doesn't need a very big one. It was a small but strategic hold, maintaining a final tether to the jewel. Only after Mary's death did that base also pass to Queen Elizabeth, once again bypassing the Queen Mother and reuniting the full piece in the young Queen's collection. Then came 1952. Almost immediately after the death of George VI, Queen Elizabeth chose this tiara for her first official portraits as monarch. Those images went everywhere: banknotes, stamps, state materials, cementing the tiara as the defining symbol of a new Elizabethan era. An era visually and symbolically independent of her mother's influence. With that, the Jewel War was effectively over. Queen Mary hadn't just protected a tiara, she had shaped the image of a queen, secured a legacy, and ensured that one of the most iconic royal jewels in history would belong exactly where she believed it always should. She left them to Elizabeth II in 1952, perfectly timed once again for her granddaughter to wear them as queen, and the Queen honoured that protection quietly and faithfully. She wore the brooches sparingly, treating them with exactly the reverence Mary had intended. But perhaps the most beautiful chapter in this story came when the Queen chose to loan them to her own granddaughter, Princess Eugenie, for her wedding. That's all for tonight. Let us know your thoughts on Queen Mary's strategic planning of royal jewels for young Elizabeth II, and whether you'd like to see a part 2 that might just shock you. But before you comment, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more royal stories.